I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me. And welcome to episode 51 of the Future Template Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, PhD, EMDR therapist, mom of 3 daughters. And thank you, as always, for joining me. And this week, I'm excited to have a rare interview. I don't do these very often, but they're always fun. And today I'm going to be interviewing Maria Romano, who is the founder and CEO of Maria Romano Marketing. And I am lucky enough to be one of her clients. And I thought that hearing from her and the work that she does could be a great resource for all of you EMDR intensive therapists who might be looking for some marketing assistance. So I'm just going to have Maria introduce herself first. And first of all, Maria, thank you for being here. I
Of course.
appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And so, yeah, my pleasure. And so just tell me and the listeners a bit about yourself, your business, and the work that we do together, because I really want people to get a sense of how you might be helpful to them. And, I might jump in here and there with follow-up questions, but I'm going to try to give you most of the airtime. So
Oh,
yeah, just
please.
introduce yourself. And yeah, anything we'd want to hear about the kind of work you do.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Maria Romano of Maria Romano Marketing. Um, so I am not a big Apple AirPods user all the time. They always fall out my ears, so you're gonna see that a lot in the video. Um,
That's
but
why I don't wear them, because they never stay in my ears.
right, I know, but the big headphones, they just look too bulky and my head look like a weird thing. I just stick to this. But anyway, so I'm Maria Romano, and I have been working with Carolyn for a few months now, and on her
I think October.
yeah, like
October,
September,
right?
October, I don't know. I did
October.
almost half a year, so congratulations to us.
Yeah,
But
well, it's May now, so however many months that is. Yeah.
right. But
Yeah.
I am I have my own marketing, and I did start off as a virtual assistant. I got into that because I went to school actually for psychology, and my main goal was
Oh,
to
okay.
be a private practice therapist. Like that was the dream, that was the goal. And
Oh,
then transitioning out of school in like the midst of COVID, I wasn't really going back after that time. COVID hit in my junior year, I believe, of college.
oh, okay.
One down. But I
I can still hear you.
okay, good. If one falls out, I'll just leave it out then because I keep
Yeah,
messing
yeah.
with my ears. But I went to school for psychology and I started working at a behavioral unit for kids mainly on the spectrum of autism, which I fell in love with. And although I loved what
Was
I
it
did,
a was it an inpatient behavioral unit or a
inpatient, yeah. So
out?
they lived in the
Oh, wow.
facility
Okay.
24 hours a
Okay.
day. So we were
Wow.
technically
Okay.
essential workers. And even if there was a
Hmm.
snow day or like literally if you couldn't even get in your car from the snow or from whatever was going on, you still had to fill up or you were getting what they call a point. That's a whole nother story, but it was an entry level job. So if you want to see anything that you ever want to see behavioral wise and just learn about psychology, that is definitely the place to be. I learned so much while
Yeah.
working there, but again, it was an entry level job. So once I hit that 1 year mark, I started getting anxiety and I was like, what do I actually want to do with my life? Like, I love these kids and this
Yeah.
is a great place, to be immersed in what I want to
Hmm.
do. It's not my end goal. So what is my end goal? And that's when I started like looking at other jobs and opportunities. And I noticed that a BCBA is a behavioral and it's like the higher end of what you could do in the field. So
Right.
I
Working with kids with autism.
right. So it's
Yeah.
ABA therapy. That's what I did. I tracked data and I just helped kids with their, day-to-day lives. But I found this lady, she had her own private practice. She actually had 2 sons that are on the spectrum, and I just
Okay.
love everything that she stood for. I love that she opened this practice. It's family owned, like her family actually works there, the sons work there. I think they did like admin work for her, answered calls. And so I started working with her, and I worked with only one kid at the time who I was obsessed with. He is so sweet, and it's early intervention. So the kids there are very, very, very young. And the whole point of early
Yeah.
intervention is to really to prep them for day-to-day life and understand their behaviors and help them like navigate, help the parents are very hands-on with the parents, which I thought was awesome. So like they would have like meetings with the parents and you talk to them about, their plans, what's going on. And some of them, the BCBAs would go to like their houses and like see how they like integrate things in their actual lives. But because they're
Right.
so young, everything you do matters. So I find myself
Mhm.
very distracted at times and I have ADHD, so and I can get lost in my head, very internalized. So I might seem like I'm paying attention, but the thing is that with tracking data, every second counts, literally every second. You need to be paying attention. You can't even look away. Like if if you're going to the bathroom break, like it has to be on downtime where someone can watch your kid. Every little thing they do,
Right.
especially around eating times, a lot of like behaviors and stuff that you want to track while they're eating, like different things, how they
Right.
ask for things, if they're trying to, integrate sign language or get them to understand certain things. So every second really counts. And I just found myself getting a little distracted and, work life. I don't have a good balance of that. Sometimes what's going on in my life, I can't just put on the back burner because it's always in my head. So I found
Yeah.
myself just getting distracted, and when I had my aha moment where I realized that I don't have this same passion that the BCBAs have, like the way they talk about these kids will warm your heart, like the way that they were so passionate and involved. I just realized that the best thing I could do for these kids was to lead, and I always wanted to have my own business. I I always wanted to have my own business, and as private practice was the goal, like that kind of what I wanted to do, and I noticed that
Right.
some of the times, like, the phone would be ringing and the owner so she is also a BCBA. She's the owner and she's involved, just how you are in your
Right.
practice, like, you're doing everything, your admin, your marketing, and it's like she couldn't balance all of these things, and I
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
in optimizing any way that you can, and I saw that as an opportunity to kind of take that route and implement that into a business. And I saw a lot on TikTok of virtual assistants. So
Right.
I started learning as I went. I had no idea what I was doing. I worked with an amazing mentor. She's awesome. And I kind of figured things out as I went and I would gain clients
Mhm.
that way. But what I did was through myself. So, like any business owner, especially small business, at the very beginning, you are admin, you are back end, you are doing the work, you are marketing, you're everything,
Accounting. Yeah.
accounting, payroll, everything. You are everything for your business.
Right.
My, and if I wasn't marketing myself, I'm not getting clients. So,
Right.
Instagram is the place that I felt most comfortable. It's what I know best. It's where I started, and that's where I would gain all of my clients. And people it seems weird because 'cause you're like, Who uses social media to grow business?" And you're like, "How is anyone going to want to work with me from social media?" Like, social media to me is like, I go on TikTok at the end of the day, or I keep up with, like,
Right.
my family group chat on Facebook, or, like,
Right. Right.
my high school friends, their Instagrams and stuff, and you check in on their life. I've never once thought, like but the way I found virtual assistant on TikTok was someone marketing that business, and it's like, if they're influencing me,
Right.
and I was like,
Right.
"Oh my god, this is something that, I might be a part of. Why couldn't I do this thing?" So
And everyone is spending time on social media, literally, well, not everybody, but almost every person in the world. So you have access to people that would be very hard to reach otherwise.
exactly, and, like, word of mouth is one thing, and actually in one of your recent videos where you were talking about networking in your personal life, I feel like when you are someone that networks online, you forget about your personal life and vice versa. Someone that works like day to day in private practice, they're not thinking about marketing their business online because they have referrals
Right.
coming to them in person, or through
Right.
personal relationships, etc. And
Right.
so just like that, that's how it is on social media. Like you can bring your personal life in, but you can also gain clients through social media. And as I was growing my business, I just immersed myself in marketing. I found so many things interesting about it. A lot of it is psychology. I love, love, love psychology. It's my number one thing, and the fact that I can still implement that in my business is a
Yeah,
big
for
thing.
sure.
Like, it's called buyer
Totally.
psychology, and it's a real thing. Like, you use psychology every single day when you're marketing and every single time you're online, and I just connected those 2 things. I loved marketing because it was like psychology, you can use psychology in it, but it wasn't actually having to be in a role or a title of
Right.
being in psychology. So I still
Yeah.
get to use that background knowledge and the things that I
Right.
love and implement it in something else that I connect and I feel passionate about. And that's how I transitioned into being a social media and marketing strategist and what I do today.
I did want to ask, I think this is something that not and I get confused by this too. Like, what's the difference between a virtual assistant, a VA, and like a social media marketing person?
Yeah. So,
Like, and how did you decide to move from one to the next?
yes. So, like, for example, what I do with Carolyn is you found me right when I was starting to transition. So, everything that I do for you is still virtual assisting duty. So virtual assistant, you can kind of niche into a bunch of different categories, whether that's social media, um, admin, tech, or like,
Right.
things like bookkeeping. Virtual
Right.
assistants is basically like having an assistant, but virtual. I mean, it's the best way to put it. Like you can put
Yeah.
any task on them, and a lot of virtual assistants work hour to hour. So when you get quoted a price, it's usually like you are doing 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week. And just depending on what it is that you need done. So this can relay on a different amount of obstacles. Like a lot, I've had clients where I've done admin and social media work for them. I had clients where I was just doing admin. Some I was doing like email management, and it really just varied on what that client needs. So it's really more client based on the sense that you're working basically, you're not working for the client, you're working with them. And but it's kind of confusing, and I feel like a lot of times virtual assisting is kind of looked at like you're paying someone to be your assistant, but you're not actually on this person's payroll. Like they're not your boss, they're not your manager.
Right. Right.
It's a mutual thing. You're still two separate entities, and you're not really working underneath this person, but you're doing tasks for them. Kind of like if you have a housekeeper or a plumber, you're hiring them for the service that they provide, and they are here to help you do what their expertise is in. And that's kind
Right.
of what you niche down in virtual assistants. So if mine was mainly like social media management, so I would do tasks like making posts, writing captions. These are things that I niche down in and I became an expert in just from doing and from being someone who grew up in social media. And
Right.
that's why
Right.
clients would come to me for that. And you're hired to do a service, but I'm not someone that is like in your payroll. Like there is no leadership.
Right.
It,
Right.
it's
Right.
it's just a mutual thing. It's
Right.
kind of hard to
And so,
explain.
but like, so for example, like a VA, you could ask a VA to do things like, oh, I want you to like organize my messy email inbox or something.
Right.
But that would not be something that's not part of social media management. So like that's not something.
Like
So now,
you can change
okay,
the that's the other thing because they're working hourly. Like when I first started working with Carolyn, we kind of had a game plan of what we wanted to do together, but those tasks changed. Like now I help write
right,
your newsletter. And before it was just making like posts and writing captions, and it kind of transitioned based on what your client needs. And
right,
you can have set packages once you're like more advanced in in your role. So you'll have packages like social media management, that's a package. You would get a set rate for a set amount of time, and you don't really venture out.
right,
And I think the hardest thing for me when transitioning is those packages that I'm so used to being like, yeah, I'm a yes man. Like anything that you want me to do, I'll be like, okay, yeah, I can do it. But it's like you have to kind of separate saying yes and really set that boundary where, like
right,
this is the thing that I'm offering you, and that's outside of what you're paying me for, so I can't say yes to everything that you want because outside of
right,
the package that you purchased. And
right, right.
so but the difference between that and then the marketing strategist is like I only help my clients with things related to marketing, and I only offer packages. So I don't have any like hourly work. I don't kind of mix and match things. I'm trying to separate that yes man thing and really stay
Right.
strict on my boundary. And so what I do now is I have set packages. What we do within the guidelines of that package, what I like help you with and that's like all I'll do. I'm not doing anything
Right.
extra. Um,
Right.
but I focus more on marketing. So one of my packages is social media management because so managing your social media is a big part of marketing because if you're not consistent, as you know, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're not,
Right.
sticking to a schedule, you're going to get lost. And so
Right.
because that is such a big aspect, I still keep that one service, but I still focus more on marketing. So I have like email marketing package where I strictly help you with email marketing. And I'm not
Mhm.
cleaning out your inbox. I'm not answering email for you. I'm
Right.
strictly
Right.
helping
Right.
you with the marketing aspect, like running a newsletter
Right.
campaign or
Right.
launching
Right.
a newsletter. So
Right.
stuff like that. And then on the other side, just overall, it's all marketing. So like a social
Yeah.
media marketing strategy package is me only helping you understand and look at the statistic, looking at the analytics, looking at your insight, um, getting on a strategy call and me having like a one-to-one hands-on approach to looking at your account and how to help you in only the marketing aspect. I'm not making
Right.
posts for you. I'm not writing your caption. I'm not doing your engagement. And that's like the big line that's drawn between marketing and management. And those often
Oh,
get
okay.
confused just because it's very similar. And
Right.
management can come along with marketing, but so the management kind of runs the account, but the marketing helps you execute what or it
Okay.
helps
I
you
see.
kind of craft what so I can help you come together with a strategy and you would give the strategy and the points and stuff to your social media manager and they would implement that through your
Okay.
content.
So, so, so I didn't realize this. So what we're doing together is actually like a hybrid then,
Hmm.
because so that's not the same package that you still offer to other people now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I work with you. You are a virtual assistant client to me. You came to me as I was transitioning, so I still help you.
Got it.
And if you want to change what you want, like help with because it's hourly, I help you with the things that you
I
want.
see.
So, like, how there before how I was helping you with one thing and now I help you with another in replacement of that
Right.
thing. It's still the same amount of time that we
I
work
see. Okay.
together,
Okay.
but it's
Yeah.
like the time's kind of segregated differently than it was previously for whatever task we were doing at that time.
So, because I'll just say that so what, well, or you could say it like, how about you, if you don't mind sharing, like in a given week, like what you do for me? Because I think people would be interested in knowing, like what, people see my Instagram and hear the podcast, and you're very involved in both of those. So, like, if you don't mind, would you describe like what you do in a given week for us, like
Yeah.
for future template parent?
So specifically for future couple parent and for Carolyn, first thing first, he is a high priority to me. I love Carolyn, so we have
Aw.
a connection and I like to talk to her one to one. But aside from being a friend that I get to work with, Carolyn, I help with a wide variety of tasks actually. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love
we
that. I love.
when we first came together, we kind of focused in on what your page was going to be and narrowing down how to separate it from your private practice
My
account.
private practice. Yeah. So my future template pair, everyone knows this, but it's my business coaching specific. That's the one that you help me with, not with my
Yes.
private practice account. Although you
Right.
do help private practice therapists with their private practice,
Yes.
but that's not mine. Yeah. Right. 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 So first we were trying to differentiate those two because my private practice account was already well established. I wasn't worried about that. So you really helped me build this other one.
Right. So I we kind of wanted to put a separate brand, an own entity to Future Corporate Parent rather than it
Right.
be a piece of a private practice. It's its own entity,
Right.
it's its own thing. We had to
Right.
create that. And the first thing
Yeah.
that we did was make sure that you were keeping your content to your Future Corporate Parent
Right. Right. I wasn't
podcast.
posting it in both places.
Yeah, and you wanna make
Yeah.
sure that and the reason that that's important, just for anyone that's curious, is because, again, you are your own entity. Just because you run both the private practice and the podcast, they're two separate things. You're not
Right.
gonna, you want your therapy clients, the people that wanna work with you in therapy, to be coming to you strictly on your private practice account, and then people that
Right.
you are different target audience at the end of the
Totally
day.
different.
So
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
it's mainly important is the target audience approach. The people that you're going to be attracting for your private practice are not the same people that you're attracting for your VIP days or your EMDR intensives. They're separate. So you want to keep those
Right.
separate. That was the first thing that we established. And then the next thing that we established was your posting schedule. Your posting schedule, we have at set time. They are not, they kind of come when they come.
I do my best. I appreciate having the set time. It does help me, even if they don't always go up at the set
Not
times. I
important to have them at that time. It's just really there for just for you to, have an idea of when to post, so you're not freaking
totally.
out of like, I need to get this done by this time, and it's just to help in that sense. So again, anyone
Well,
that's really like listening to like or was wants to know, times do not matter when you post, but having a posting time does help with consistency. But
yeah,
it's not going to make or break how well your post does at the end of the day.
right. But I think that's one of the biggest things that we did that's been so helpful is that we have a monthly calendar for posting, and like you every week create the schedule for the week and like have the captions of the post for each day laid out in a very organized way so I can find it. And you link to the carousel or you link to the whatever, the cover. It's all super organized. So for those of you who are working on your Instagram strategy, I think having a content calendar, it was like transformational for me. And I see that in terms of the numbers. Like I think when we started in October or September, my FCP account on Instagram had like just over 100 followers,
Mhm.
and now it's in May and we're almost at 1,000.
You're
So you
breaking
can,
1,000,
and
yeah.
I had, yeah, and I had that FCP account open for like 6 months. I hadn't been doing anything with it, obviously, but once we started using a strategy and and having consistent posting times and everything, it's obviously grown a ton. So I just can't stress enough how valuable it is to have that schedule and consistency, and you have organized it so beautifully. It's so easy for me to find the caption, find the post, find the cover. It's very clear. We've come to like a nice workflow. So each week you how many I can't remember like how many different things do you create for me each week?
Yeah, so now from when we started, now we realized that we had it was best just for visibility to do more reels on your account. So we
Right,
do 5 reels where I write the captions for you come up with the idea you have the ideas already planned for you already. So I write the captions for you, and then you have 4 additional posts on top of that, 3
right.
relating only now the 4th is related to the it's always related to the podcast, but 4 are strictly
Depends
about
on
the
if I get to it
podcast.
or not.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we had a carousel post explaining what the podcast is about, and then we have a quote, so you kind of get a sense of what podcast is about, or to give you that little snippet. And then we have a clip, which is also a reel, um, a clip of the podcast, something
right,
that, is going to grab someone's attention when they're listening. It gives them an extra piece of what the podcast is about from we're in the middle. So they get an idea of what the post is about without having to listen to it first. And which is what we also do with your newsletter. And
right,
your additional post is another carousel because by our um, variety is key. So you can't have all reels. That's not great. You
right.
can't have all carousel posts. That's not great. So we came up with a system where you have a nice mixture of most. And just for visibility, having more reels is beneficial. So you have one a day in your time block. And then you have the 2 carousel posts. So the one about the podcast. The next one is a more in-depth piece from the podcast that you take for you didn't catch on from watching the podcast and listening, and then you see the extra post. That's what that extra post
Right.
is. It's the piece of information that you will also find in the podcast, but it really hones in on that key point. And
Right.
we used to take them from your blog, which is about the podcast. So it all kind of comes back to what the podcast is about. So this would just be
Right.
like what another piece of information that would be helpful that would want you to watch the podcast or listen to the podcast. And it's still like leans on that same idea. So the whole week is just that like designated to kind of constructing a system to bring you through the journey of this is the podcast that you're about to listen to, the podcast about, here's a clip about it. And then stuff that has to do with your work in between with BIP days and EMDR intensive, helping fellow therapists do the same thing. And then that extra post to just a more educational background to what you also already listened to, kind of like a wrap up.
Yeah.
And then on
Right.
top of that, in the week, I also help Carolyn with her newsletter, so I write that out for
Right.
her, and we came up with a good system of what what you would gain from the kind of like an outline, I like to look at it. An
Yes, I think
outline,
it's a good one.
basically, like, of how you would a book, you would have an outline paper is what the newsletter is. You're getting a rough idea while you read. You have to read it top to bottom. It's really important that you read it top to bottom so you understand. And
Right.
then when you go whether you go back from the podcast to read the rest of it or if you read the whole newsletter and then you're like, "Oh, you know what? Like, these are some interesting points. I wanna know what you mean by this second point. Like, what else is that out like, about?" And then that is what you can find within the podcast.
Right. And then and within the email, there's like a link so that people can go watch the podcast on YouTube where they can listen to it. It's very easy for people to. And that reminds me is I have to look at the one that you sent me for the week, which I will do. But yeah, so and I think some of the other stuff that has been really helpful is like you do some engagement still on my account, which is great. And then you also really helped me develop a system for stories, Instagram stories, which was something I didn't really know a whole lot about. And I think that it's definitely true. Like I think one of the things for private practice therapists to know is that people do care about who you are as a person. They don't just want to hear like this is why I'm a great therapist. So like stories are an opportunity for you to show a little bit more of like your personality. And I think and also if you're trying to sell something specific like an intensive, for example, stories is a great way to kind of like expand on in a less formal way, like what is in your sort of regular content. So that's been really helpful for me too. And I've gotten into a much better rhythm of like actually doing stories every day, which I think is really helpful. Um, so yeah, those are all the things that we have done. And I think the results kind of speak for themselves in terms of, what we've been able to accomplish in a short time and the amount of you know, visibility that you've helped me get, which is huge. Um, so I wanted to ask, like, that's what you've done for us. Like, what would you say are the services that right now you're most excited about that you offer to therapists? So, like, who's your target, to your niche client? Like, who's your niche client and what do you want to do with that person?
Yeah, so my big package and the thing I'm most excited about right now is my one marketing consultation program. It's a 3-month program, which you can also extend if you want more from that, where I work really hands on with my client to kind of come up with a strategy, a plan, and really be a second pair of eyes for your page to see what's doing well, what could be improved, what could be changed, and that comes with biweekly calls. So, you get more of that one-to-one actual talk. And the thing that I found specifically and the reason that I came up with this program is that, like a lot of people and myself, I do better talking to someone one-to-one. I'm not someone that needs a whole lot from a big group setting just simply because my mind's all over the place and I have a specific set of needs and I want my page to really get if I'm paying you this money, I want to know that my money's worth. And
Absolutely.
so that's why I find it super, super important to work with people one to one, especially people that are coming to you for marketing because marketing is not a one size fit all approach. And I think that is the biggest lesson that I can teach anyone is that no matter who you are, what you do, just because one person did something that works really well for them doesn't mean it's going to work well for you. And I can even implement certain strategies with multiple clients and they might help, but each person is very, very unique and their set of circumstances are very, very unique. And the things that you have
Right.
to offer are very, very unique. So it's really being on to those uniqueness and not being cookie cutter and really setting yourself apart from this saturated market. Not as saturated as you think. You're just not marketing to the right people or in the right place.
Right.
And so
Right.
with that, I think that the person that I really work with most are just private practice owners. The person that is the face of their business, the person that wants to scale their business to more than like Caroline does with one-to-one sessions. Like you are so much more than one-to-one sessions. And although therapy is even super beneficial in my life and something that is really important to me, there is so much that from one person can gain, like you do with EMDR intensives. And the way that you do things with intensive and what I've learned from what an intensive is, there's so much more than working with one person. You get so much time. And I even felt after like a session, it's like, what do you really get out of the session? Like, what are we really pushing? And like you said, with intensives, you get more time. So sure, you can catch up and like, how was your weekend? But you really get into the nitty gritty. You get to know someone, you get
Right.
to be a part of this person's experience and help them get better outcomes because you're working with them so closely for a longer amount of time. Because like in a
Right.
therapy
Right.
session, you start, how's your weekend? What's going on? And then start to delve into something. You don't really get past the what's going on in your week. And then it's like, okay, we need to wrap up. We need to like
Right.
regulate
Exactly.
ourselves before we leave the door and really see you next week.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that
45 minutes goes very fast.
very, very sad. So
Yeah.
I also think that the same of what I want to help my clients with is, you know, whether you want to give your client a better client experience by offering incentives, or if you want to give them a better experience by doing group programs and starting a podcast, doing a retreat, whatever it is that you see yourself doing, I think the main thing is one, figuring out what your goals are, not your goals for the week, not your goals for the next couple months. Who are you as a therapist? Who do you want to become? And what is your like what is it the thing that seems so out of reach, but the thing that you want most? And if you could
Yeah.
see yourself in 5 years, like ideally in your dream scenario, not like even out of your like realistic standards, who is that person? Who do you want to be? And it's really like helping people understand that that's not far out of reach and coming up
Yeah.
with a game
Exactly.
plan to make that from an unrealistic reality to something that is very much possible.
Totally. And I think like I can speak to how that is possible because like a year ago I was just starting. I think I just done my first VIP day probably a year ago, and I, things have kind of exploded is too strong of a word, but have like really come a long way since then, and it's only been a year. It feels like a long time, but also not a long time. So I think it's really important to help people realize that like things can feel impossible. Don't let that stop you from starting them because you don't know where you're going to be in a year if you just keep like plugging away. And I think that's why you've been so instrumental for me is that like the schedule that we've worked out and kind of the workflow makes me stay consistent. And I think that's the number one thing that's helped my like presence both with the podcast and on Instagram grow is that I've been consistent in my messaging and consistent in like how frequently I post and like, you know, and it keeps bringing more people into my world, which is what you want. Because there's a ton of noise out there on social media and like consistency in messaging is the way to kind of cut through that noise, I think. Otherwise, why would people notice you, you know?
Yeah.
And I did want to kind of follow up with the EMDR piece in general, because I think like that I'm sort of curious on your side of things. Because I didn't expect you to know anything about EMDR before we started working together, but I'm curious, like, what's been your experience learning about that? And is that something that interests you? Like, are you interested in working with EMDR therapists? Like, do you feel like learning about that has been valuable for you, I guess? Because
Yeah.
the audience to this podcast is the EMDR therapist, so I want them to know why working with you would be good for them.
If it,
Like,
yeah,
why do you feel like, yeah, I'm just interested in your perspective on EMDR, your interest in it, if you feel like that's something you want to keep focusing on with your, in terms of who you attract, I guess,
yeah. It's
if that
actually
makes sense.
really funny because before we started working together, when threads first came out, I made a thread and I was like, I want to know your thoughts on CBT. And you responded, you're like, this is a biased opinion, but, and you really like didn't go into like why CBT isn't really like as great as it seemed. And I'm the type of person where I'm very internalized and I want to get to like the root of things. I want to understand things, especially in my own experience, my own journey in therapy. So I wanted to understand like what was the best route for me to get the best results. And on like a personal level, just from your response to that and then working together over and just from your response working together over these so many months, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to do EMDR therapy. I've I've become that person where like even just from listening, I become like a target audience. I became like your ideal client because or not, I don't know about ideal, but I became like that part of that target audience where I'm like, okay, maybe this is the thing that I need because you really hone in on the buyer's journey. And the first part of that is problem awareness. And problem awareness is, you know, making sometimes you don't know there's a problem or an issue or something that you need in your life until it's brought to your attention and you know more
Right.
about that. And just from the amount that I've learned, I'm like, oh my God, this is like exactly what I need like
Everybody
help
should be
with.
doing.
And everyone should be doing it. Not I'm like the biggest advocate for like everyone being in therapy in general and everyone working on their mental health. But it's just like the more that I learn about that on a personal level, I'm like, okay, maybe EMDR is like something I need in my own personal life. And it's so funny, like, do you know that's
I
how
mean,
it's
I would say,
working?
I would say yes to anybody who said that. So.
Right. But it's like because I'm not even technically your target audience, but your message is so aligned with your brand and you know your voice, you know who you are, you know that what you offer, that it even resonates with someone that's I wasn't looking for that or wasn't I'm here to work with you. And it's like that's how you know it's working because I'm the type
Right,
of
right.
person that like I'm very aware of what's marketing and what's not. And you want to and that's why personal branding is so important and how you're talking about with
Right.
stories because like anyone should be able to look at this and be like, you know what, like I actually need help with this thing. And I mean, of course, you have a niche, the target audience for a reason because you can't really market to everybody. But the fact that anybody, even with outside of your niche, can come to you and be like, wow, like you really opened my eyes to this thing. And the thing that I think I learned most, I love working with therapists in general, specifically a lot with like, I don't know if it's like just because it's like the way that it's a personality type or the way that people talk to you in this type of therapy, but a lot of like trauma therapists, people in and a lot of that is connected with EMDR therapy and it's a big
Right.
and I didn't
Right.
realize that getting to a lot of like the root of things is really beneficial with EMDR therapy and specific to trauma. And so just learning and how those two things connect and like one specific story you had with a woman who was getting over her own trauma with her a loss of a child and it's a really beautiful story and it's something that I
Yeah.
like hearing more about and I think that I help people more and like align with my clients more when I connect with them outside of them being someone that worked with me. I'm not the type of
Right.
person that will engage with your content simply to boost my engagement. If I don't actually align to what it is, if I comment on your post, no, it's because I actually enjoyed like reading what it is that you said and I paid
Right.
attention
Right.
because
Right.
I'm someone that like I'm that target audience where I'm scrolling and if you can get me to stop scrolling and look at it or look at what it is that you post, like that says something. And I only engage and want to work with people that I can connect with and work on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, especially working one to one with someone, you you want to like that person. You don't want to be like, I have to
Yeah.
get on a call with so and so. Like, you are one
Exactly.
not going to be helping yourself because you're going to be miserable, but you're also not going to like that person's not going to gain anything. And that's not good for you as a business owner and for them because one, they're not getting the experience they deserve and what they need. And also they just do not, if you guys don't align, you don't align. And I think that EMDR therapists are a part of my target audience, mainly because I the people that I connect with you for a reason. And when I talk to you,
Yeah.
it's natural. I don't feel like I have to like add any fluff and you shouldn't. And that's the big
Right.
part of what I do is bringing this authenticity back into marketing. I want you to actually enjoy the work you do. And when therapists come to me, a lot of times they're like, oh, I want to get this off my plate. I don't want to deal with it. And I want to be able to help you not only enjoy the work that you're doing, but feel aligned to me as a person and feel comfortable, you know, with feedback, comfortable saying what you need. And that's one thing I
Yeah.
can 100% give Carolyn crop for is that she speaks up for herself. And I want to say that I'm so proud of you. I know I've said it before, but like, especially I'm like a recovering people pleaser. I know it's something that we connect on, and I never wanna make someone feel uncomfortable to where if I'm working with you, you don't feel comfortable to speak up. And how are you ever going to gain anything and advance
Right.
your own marketing if you do not feel comfortable talking to the person that you're working with? And
Right.
so overall, I just think that unless like you have to be able to align with your clients and align with the people that you work with because if you don't, who are you helping and what are they going to gain
Right.
from this? And at the end of the day, even if the people that are in it for the money, they're not going to work with you long because they're going to realize you're full of BS and they're going to be
Right.
like, you know what, like this person doesn't care about me and my needs. Like you're not going to prolong that relationship, which is a burning of a bridge. It's a you're not getting referrals from that person. And honestly, who knows? You could be on a podcast listening one day and they're going to be talking bad about you because you were that downfall in their journey. And that's like
Yeah.
it's
No.
a learning point, but it's not beneficial.
That's true. I think also for like everything you're saying applies also to therapists and clients. Like as a therapist, I think it's our obligation. We do need to be able to weed people out that we think we're not going to click with. You don't say it that way to the person,
Right.
but if I really have I don't really want to say it this bluntly, but if I don't like a potential client, I have an obligation to send them to somebody else
Right.
because how am I going to work well with this person if they're going to be telling me their deepest, darkest stuff? And I'm like, I don't like this person very
I
much.
don't care. Like I do not care what you're
I,
saying to me. Like
like, or
what?
like,
That's not
yeah, or
good.
yeah. So it's really important to be honest with yourself as a business owner about like, I don't think this is a good client for me. And you're doing yourself a service because if you do a bad job with someone, word gets around like it does. And we all have, we all make mistakes, but like, I always tell therapists I'm working with, if you get a bad like feeling about someone, don't ignore that. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means that you're probably just going to do good work with them, and that's fine. Send them on to somebody else. That's
Right.
fine.
Yeah. And like
The
that
other Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say that that's the whole full circle of it that we ignore is that not only is it not good for you, but it's mainly not good for the person you're working with. And I feel like
Right,
your client should always be first priority. And
right,
if they're making you uncomfortable or miserable, unhappy, or not aligned, it's gonna affect them as well. And why would you want
sure,
to be a part of some like, especially being in a field where you're supposed to be a part of some healing journey? If that's really
right,
what you're here for, why would you continue to work with someone where you're going to be damaging that? You're not going to be
right.
bringing this person up. You could be potentially making their experience worse.
And like as all therapists know, it's a complicated topic because sometimes you don't realize that that's happening until it's been a while. But I think it's our obligation in those moments to actually slow down and say to the client, like, "Hey, something doesn't feel right here. Like, what are we going to do about it?" But that So I think it's the same thing, whether we're talking therapists and therapy clients or we're talking like working with someone in your business, you do have to feel safe with that person.
Right.
Like it has to go both ways. Like the client has to feel safe with you and you have to feel safe with them or else the work is not going to be good.
And that's
And
why
I think
niching
that's
down is
true.
important. And, like,
Exactly.
I know you
Exactly.
can't market to everybody, but it's like you're gonna find consistencies in the people that you work with based off of the type of therapy that you're doing. And
Right.
that's a big part of just reaching your target audience and talking to them is that you're gonna realize that they have a lot of similarities. Like, for example, with trauma, there are signs to trauma. There are signs to someone who has been through trauma. And although it's not a deciding factor for working with a client, sometimes if you can connect with that specific niche and you can understand those signs better, that's beneficial for the client because you understand that what that's going towards, if that makes sense.
And I also think that's an important point that, like, I think sometimes with marketing on social media, people feel like, oh, I shouldn't, I've heard people say this, I shouldn't be giving away stuff for free. And to which I say, like, sure. And the way you're going to get people into your world is if you teach them something that's valuable. So it's okay to teach somebody something, even if it's a 60-second reel and someone's like, wow, I learned something, they're all the more likely to come back to you because they trust you. So I think people worry about, oh, well, I shouldn't give tips away for free. No, no, no. Those are not for free. That's part of the marketing journey is like you're drawing them into your world and building the trust that they have with you.
And that,
So,
my
like, it's
friend,
okay to
is
teach
called
something.
yeah, but that's called passive income. That's what content should be. You should be gaining clients through your content, and at the end of the day, you're sure it's technically free to do it,
Right.
but if you have to look at it at that sense, it's not free.
No, it isn't. I think
You
right.
are potentially gaining clients through your content. That's why
Absolutely.
value-based content is so important and why you need to show
Right.
up and why you need to be consistent. Because what makes you different than the other therapists? I can go
Right.
on
Exactly.
my insurance right now. You can get a list of therapists and you can pick from any one of them. So what makes you any different from those list of people? And it's your
Right.
personality. It's you, the person. You are the specific you as an individual, you stand out for XYZ. So why would someone choose you over them? If you don't want to gain clients, that's fine. Like then you don't need to market your business. But
Right.
if you want to gain clients, if you want to, start a bigger movement, if you want to help people, sometimes you just have to make those decisions and those sacrifices. And some people
And it's
see
not
social. Go ahead.
yeah, I think it gets to be bad when people think that they're sacrificing something instead of being like, no, that's actually how you market. Like
Right.
people have to feel like if you give them something small that's of value, then they're gonna believe you have something bigger of more value to give them that they're gonna pay for. You
Right,
know,
and
like
that's how you
so I
show
just feel like
yourself as
that's
an authority, and that's how people
right,
see your
exactly.
value and see that you're actually knowledgeable, because if someone can go on your page and they don't see anything, they're gonna click off, and sure, you can
Right.
get referrals, and you're like, "That's fine," but that's not going to scale your business. That's not going to optimize your systems. You're not going to gain anything if you're not trying. So that's a
And I do
limiting
think
mindset for people that think it, in my opinion.
and I really do believe that if you are trying to scale your business in any way, get beyond just simple one-to-one clients, then you absolutely have to do other kinds of marketing. I mean, like I'm a huge fan of in-person networking, like huge. I do think once you're outside of the just like trading money for hours model, your reach, like if it's not therapy, you can have a broader audience and it like, you don't have to just be in your state. And so you absolutely have to have a way to connect with people who are not just, in your neighborhood. And so
Right.
it's a different world now. And I also think that having a social media presence, even if that's not the one thing that gets a client into your world, gives you a sense of more legitimacy. Like, yes, you have to have a website. You also need to have a social media presence. You also need to have like, a I don't know, like, I think it's useful to have an email list, like, the more of those things you have, the more legitimate you seem to someone, and it's all part of the
Exactly.
same package.
Exactly. Like
And I
you're
think
not a
that
scam.
right, exactly, people are like, "Oh, well, she has a website. Oh, look, there's her, like, little Instagram icon. Now I can see all this other stuff." And it feels very much like the whole legitimate thing. Um, I did want to say, I think that for those EMDR therapists who are listening, which is most people listening to it, like I think that one thing that Maria really does have now is that you like develop this knowledge base about EMDR and EMDR intensive. So like for you working with an EMDR therapist who wants to expand into intensives, you know exactly what kind of content works for that. And so you're going to have really targeted specific feedback about like maybe in your caption you should be talking about this. People really like to hear about that. So you've developed this like knowledge base that I think it's really sets you apart from like another therapist social media manager because you like learned about and EMDR, I talk about this all the time, is like very hot. Like people are talking about it. And so, but I think that people in the therapy world are talking about it, but not so much necessarily the people in the marketing world. So you're like a step ahead, Maria, because you have that knowledge now. And I think you could be a huge asset to like people listening to this podcast who want help with their marketing because you have that actual subject knowledge, not just the like business knowledge. And so I think bringing those together is really powerful. And I have seen it too, like in the course of the time we've been working together, like how your captions have evolved. And I can tell like the more you've learned about EMDR, the more you're able to just like naturally talk about it in a way that makes sense. And so
Right.
any EMDR therapist who wants help in that area, like you have an advantage because you know about the content as well as just strategy. So that's why I wanted to have you on because I think that EMDR is such a hot therapy model now and it's only going to get and intensives especially are only going to get more appealing. And that's great. And it means that you also need to stand out, EMDR therapist. And so having someone like you, Maria, who like already has the content knowledge along with the marketing knowledge could be really, really beneficial for people who want help with their social media in particular.
Thank you
So
so
that's why I
much.
wanted to. And the other, I just am trying to be mindful of the time. I just want to talk one more quick question. Where do you see your business going in the future? Like you were talking about how therapists should be thinking a year ahead, 5 years ahead. Like where would you like to be? I don't know, in 3 years, business wise.
Yeah, so I want to develop myself as someone who works with therapists one to one specifically. I don't ever want to you're not gonna see me doing group calls and group programs because it's just not where I think that people can really thrive. I think it's better to work really one to one and close with people. So my next biggest step and like kind of that next, scale, I guess, the next step on the staircase would be,
Mhm.
making my own agency. So I would
Oh,
still
awesome.
be that face. I would still be that person that you work directly. I'm not handing off my work and someone else is going to be answering questions. No, you're going to be working with me. There'll be other expertise in other areas. Well, you'll work with them one to one on their expertise and their knowledge. Like, for example, lead generation. I'm not an expert in that. Someone can definitely help you, and I want them on my team because I want to work with you, but you're going to get their aspect of it and how to advance your marketing in that way, and then still working one to one. So the agency would bring in people from different fields, different niches, and we would come together and kind of be like a team to work on your
Oh,
profile and
okay.
really get to work one to one. I don't know if that's really a thing yet or if that's really how an agency works with that. And then I'll be the first one to do it, and that's fine by me. I can start that.
Yes, yes,
But
exactly, exactly.
yeah, so I wanna have people know that they have a support system and they're not like a paycheck. They're not someone that is gonna go on the back burner. Like your work is gonna be in front of my face. Me. I'm not handing it off to somebody else and they're gonna answer your
Right.
questions. Like you wanna work with someone, you're working with an expert for their expertise, not the Joe Schmo they hired beneath them. There's not gonna be a beneath me. There's
Right.
going to be partnerships, people that have different knowledge in different areas, and we would help you with different aspects. You would get that right, that group effort, but for one person. So instead of it being me working one and splitting my time between 20 people at a time, it would be you getting 20 people, getting individual eyes on you specifically. So everything would be revolved around the client experience.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. That's exciting. Yeah,
I,
and I
I think
think it's
so.
and I think it's great that like the virtual world, I don't know what I'm saying exactly, but like that there's unlimited opportunities for growth in some ways because we can access resources that know, are all over the world and you can connect with people everywhere. So it really is, there's this like unlimited potential in terms of resources you can access. But one of the hardest things to do, I think, is to find those. So if someone else is putting those together in one place, and then you as the client just need to make one contact and then all your needs are met, like that's a huge, I know for me when that's what I was looking for was like, I don't want 10 different people. I want to have one person that I can work with closely and not have to be communicating with like a million, like I don't have time for that. I don't have energy for that.
Right.
Like
Their
it's a
journeys are
one-stop
not your
shop.
journey. Your stories are not
I,
your story.
exactly. I think a one-stop shop is what people are looking for. Um, because and people really want to feel like they have a really individualized experience. And I think, yeah, people don't want to just buy like a ebook that has like a bunch of templates that are sort of relevant to them. Like
That
people
you
want
can
to like,
get
okay,
anywhere else. Like you want to
right,
get yourself a
exactly.
car.
And like it's fine to have tools that you help people use, but like, sure, I can have a book of templates, but I also want to sit down with someone and be like, how are these relevant to me? Like I need you
Right.
to figure out how I can use these, that not just like, oh, here's a $29 ebook, you know? And
Right.
I really do think individualization and personalization is absolutely what people want.
Right. And
Um,
execution. And I feel like people
yes,
kind of give
yes,
you
yes,
these
yes.
tools, but it's like, how do you use them? Like you can't, that saying with the fish, like you can give a man a fish, but if he'll eat for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he can eat for a lifetime. And it's like, that's the
Right,
tools that I want to provide to people is once, whether you stop working with me, you can still implement these strategies on your own and
right,
you can do it. You can do it. That's like the main message. You too can also do these things that you see other people doing in your own way. You don't need
right.
to take what they have and copy it because what are you learning and what are you gaining and how are you going to help these people?
And because the world of social media is so noisy, like I said, like you have to personalize it or else no one's ever gonna like you said, no one's gonna stop scrolling if they see something that looks like 10 other things they thought. But if
Right.
there's someone who's showing up as their authentic self, that absolutely jumps off the screen at somebody. So there are things that work, but what makes someone stand out is like, okay, this works. How do I take my personality, myself, and apply it to this thing that's working? That's like
A hundred
that's what makes the
percent.
difference, I think, for
Yeah.
sure. And like, when I get DMs from people, they say things like, I really appreciate the fact like it'll be an EMDR therapist who wants to do intentions, but she'll say something like, the reason I reached out to you is because I know you're a mom.
Yeah.
Right? So, I think they also trust that I know what I'm talking about, but a lot of people can make it seem like they know what they're talking about. The difference is they're like, "Something about your life resonates with my life, and that's why I trust you."
Exactly.
You
Exactly,
know?
and that's what you'll notice with working with people is that you align with these people because they resonate, because you have these similarities, and that's why people really, really connect with other people, and that's why personal branding is so important to implement into your brand because you are not a robot. You are
Right.
more than a private practice owner. You are also a mom. You're also a doctor, which is incredible, and we haven't talked
Thank
about
you.
it yet publicly,
Oh,
but
they've heard about it.
in
They've
case
heard
you're
about it.
not you don't know, like, my girl Carolyn, the doctor now, and she's a
Yes,
mom, and
thank
she
you.
does all these other things, and you're making this big move coming up, and you are more than just a private practice owner, and I think that other therapists can take the same message away is you are more than your title. You are more
Right.
than your body. You are a whole
And
you're so many
I
things.
honestly think that's what resonates with people. Like, there are lots of EMDR intensive therapists out there and people who are talking about them, but if you show up as yourself, that's gonna set you apart. And so that and yeah, like, we're all mindful about how much of ourselves we share, of course, but I think that it's very hard, especially in a field where you're trying to get someone to do something so personal, as go to therapy with you, to get them to trust you if you don't show a little bit of yourself. I think you really have to in this day and age.
Exactly.
Maybe it was different with Freud, but it's not different. It's different
Yeah,
now.
exactly, like, modern therapy is so different, and it's, like that's, like, a really big thing with trust that you have to give a little to get some. So it's, like, what can you bring to the table as well for your clients where they're gonna feel that? Especially with trauma, clients, like, they're
Right.
they're literally telling you their deepest, darkest secrets of things that they probably haven't even said out loud before. So why would
Yeah,
they
absolutely
say it
not.
to you? And that's why that connection was very, very important in that
Yeah,
rapport.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This
Thank
was so
you.
great. I thought this was fun and useful, so I hope you enjoyed chatting about all the cool stuff you're doing. And I just think it's been really fun for me. I mean, you've been like invaluable for me in terms of my growth. So I just also wanted people to know that like the results you've gotten for me are phenomenal. And I think that alone is the reason that people should reach out to you.
Thank you
And
so
then
much,
I also
Carolyn.
think you have experience in not just like therapists who are building practices, but like the work you've done with me is building a second business, like a not a therapy practice business, so that you also are very, very skilled now in like moving beyond the therapy room, which is what a ton of therapists are interested in. So I think you have that knowledge as well. So I just
Thank you,
wanted people to
Carolyn.
know how to reach out to you. And yeah, and that being said, what's the best way for people to connect with you if they are trying to learn more about you?
Yeah, so you can mainly find me on Instagram. I'm Maria Romano Marketing. My website is actually going under construction. I'm completely redoing it. So the best way you can reach me is on Instagram. You can
Okay.
find my email and the link in my bio, my stand store. You can book your calls there. You can learn a little bit more about my services. And anyone that really has questions, I just recommend them DM me on Instagram because my virtual door is always open.
Yes, and you're very responsive. I will give you like you're amazingly
Thank
responsive.
you.
And one thing I really respect about Maria too, and I've noticed is that you and I think are on a parallel journey of like maintaining good business boundaries. So I really appreciate that, like, if I message you over the weekend because I'm just thinking about it, I don't expect you to respond because I want you I respect your time off, and I notice how good of a job you're doing of being like, "Hey, I saw this. I'll get back to you on Monday." And I really respect that, and I think the more people should do. So I think it sets a good example for all of us to like
It's
work with
so
people who hold good
hard. It is
business
so
boundaries. It's
hard. And
really
I'm the
hard.
type of
It's really
person
hard.
that, especially with my clients, you get tech support, so you get the most exclusive access you can, and that access goes straight to my phone. And my phone is most likely on me because especially
Right.
during the work week, but I will see that message, and because my notifications aren't turned off or paused, I'll be like, "Okay." And then I'll forget. I'm like, if I don't respond to this now, or like I'll forget about it, or I'll think I respond, and it'll slip my mind. So it's so hard to
It
set
is
those
really
like
hard.
boundaries because it's like we're in this universe and this lifestyle where technology is everywhere. So it's
But I
hard
think
to
it's
separate that
really
stuff.
it is, and I think it sends a really good message when we do it because it gives other people permission to do it as well, you know?
Exactly, and
And
that's
like
really, really
and so
important for
it is really
for
important.
our field
And it's
especially.
and it's hard, but I also tell people, like, "Look, if this person really wants to work with you, they can wait until Monday. Like, it's okay.
Mhm.
If you don't respond to them on Sunday, it's fine."
Right, someone that
But
actually
it's
wants
hard.
to put it that thing that separates the people that are serious and the ones that aren't, and just because they stopped responding and they're not ready doesn't mean they won't one day, but that also means that,
Exactly.
you're not wasting your time having these back and forth conversations that aren't actually going to work with you. So it's
I
good if they can't wait and they probably weren't gonna put in the work and win therapy.
and I also I'll say I wanna share this one story that you just reminded me of because I think it's an important message, like, um, I just recently, in the past week, connected with someone, and I'm gonna work with them and like, as a do some business coaching with them, like, for them. They hired me. I They have been following me on Instagram, and we've been messaging and thought for over a year.
Yeah,
And they finally and that's okay, and that is like, that means I did my job well. It doesn't mean that I did something
exactly.
wrong. It means that I did it well, and so I think you have to remember, like, it can take time, and if you're not consistent, you will lose those people. That's why you have to just stay
Keep
at it,
showing
like
up. Stay at it,
and,
show up,
like,
be consistent.
everyone's life is different. I don't know what the thing that finally made this person reach out, but that doesn't really matter. The fact is, they knew that they could recount on the fact that I was still gonna be there because I kept showing up. And so
Exactly.
it can sometimes take a year, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. I think that's actually a really positive sign that
And
your
on top
messaging
of
is
that,
really clear.
yeah, don't be afraid to be repetitive. There's no such thing because odds are they might have not even seen it the first 5 times
Absolutely.
and think that you were gonna not everyone sees every piece of content you put out there, sadly, I'm sorry it's the truth, but that
It
don't
is. I
think
mean,
that you're being repetitive.
if you look at your real views, you'll see that's very clear that not everybody sees every piece of content.
Exactly. And with that, it's just, showing up, being like continuing to show up and be that consistency. And that's why it's also on that psychological aspect of marketing. The more consistent you are, the more likely someone is to trust you because you're constantly there.
Absolutely.
And for anyone that is nervous about putting themselves out there, just know that it takes 7 times on average for someone to see something for them to decide this is what I need help with. And if you are
Exactly.
scared to put yourself out there are so many resources out there to help you get comfortable. And the only piece of advice I could really give you that it's gonna kind of tacky and dumb, but just keep showing up. Practice makes
Absolutely.
perfect. The more that you do it, the more likely you're gonna feel comfortable and you're gonna want to continue doing it. You're gonna get used to it. I know someone who was doing lives every single day for a year. Will I ever do that? Probably not. But that person was so scared to show up, but now they did it every day for a year and it's so effortless. And they were booking clients on these calls, on these live calls, and it's just like it there's just certain things that we have to overcome, and you're right, it's not a sacrifice, it's an investment. So make that
And
investment in yourself.
and remember, nobody cares as much about you as you do. So like the fact that
Yes,
you're showing up in a live, nobody else cares. They don't remember that you did it 100 times. They don't remember. It's just you that's worried about that. Case in point, like I have one right now. I get cold sores about 4 times a year. It's just in my whatever. I have them. And like I could get embarrassed about that, but I don't. I just go on Instagram and post a reel with this like big thing on my face and it's gonna be gone next week. And like if that bothers someone, well, then they don't need to be in my world. But like
right.
imperfection is absolutely the way to show up. Like people
You're
want you to show up imperfectly. Like, don't you love watching the reels of people just being their messy selves? Like people want to see that from you too,
Yeah, they
you
want the
know?
raw, they
And
want the real, and that is what builds connection because they see you
they
more.
want to see the like sad pictures of my kids drew in my like messy bookshelf. Like that's fine.
Right. And, like, I
Like
talk
that's
about
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say that I talk about my dog, and I'll, like, I'll talk about him with my clients when we get on a call, and they're like, "You know what? No one ever shares their experience with their dog." They made it seem like I had a client, she's like, "I got a dog. I never had a puppy before, and no one talks about how hard it is." And I'm like, "Exactly. People think it's a big aesthetic thing. It's not. You don't have to have all these crazy visuals. You don't have to live this perfect life. Just show up. Just be
Mhm.
consistent. Show them that.
No.
Honestly,
People don't
people will gain so
people
much more
don't
from
want
that.
people don't want to see you living a perfect life because then they can't relate to you at all.
Exactly, exactly. Like, we
Like
wanna see the raw, the real, and the messy.
exactly. I mean, the people that I have chosen to work with over the years in various capacities feel authentic to me, and that's why I've chosen them. Like there are business coaches out there I would never want to work with because I'm like, you and I are not alike at all. Like you will live in a different world than I do, and that's fine. But I'm not interested in working with you then.
And just
So be
because
yourself.
someone has the tools to help you, like, that's the thing, like, someone could be an expert. Like, I had this personal experience where I worked with someone where they said all the right things, they knew what they were talking about, they were really knowledgeable in what they were providing, and when I worked with them, they were a complete dud. Like, I paid them, was someone I was working with, they were helping me with something, and if you if you give off that icky vibe and you don't align with that person, and it just goes to show that the raw, the real, and the extraness is better than
Yeah,
showing up fake because someone's gonna start working with you and catch on to your BS like we talked about before, and they're gonna get the ick, they're gonna feel uncomfortable, they're not gonna be speaking up for themselves, there's not gonna be an advocate, they're not gonna feel like they're getting the actual tools and resources that they paid you for, and
exactly.
it's not in
And
the
that
end, it's gonna mess up.
and then word gets around. They tell other people that that was their experience, and then the best. Well, I think the other thing I tell people is one of the best marketing strategies you have is being a good therapist. If
Yes.
you're good at your job, then people
Yes.
will know that about you. Like, so it's one thing to do good marketing, like we're talking about, but you also need to be good at what you do.
You
So,
have to show up that way. Like, that's why aligning
yes,
your message with your
exactly.
brand is so important because if you are not being the person that you're portraying yourself out as to be, it's gonna show. And like you said, people will talk.
Yeah, they will. And it's easy to talk to, like, the internet makes it very easy to get your message out there about things
get
that
your
you're
message
not.
out there, know who worked with that person, and odds are you're gonna find that a lot of people had similar circumstances, and that's why it makes people also comfortable speak out about their circumstances because they know that they're not alone. And that's why
Right.
also showing up is important because people want to know that they're not the only ones, and you never know who your message is going to affect in a positive way.
Totally. Okay, well, I definitely am going to stop now because we're just over an hour. But I just wanted to say thank you again for making time,
Thank you,
and we'll
Carolyn.
definitely put your contact info in the show notes, and people know how to reach me if they can't figure out how to get in touch with you. Um, Episode 52 is next week, and so that's obviously the official 1 year anniversary of the podcast. And so what I'm going to be doing is just sharing little bits of kind of like my favorite episodes from the past year. It's a little highlight reel of the first year of the podcast. So if you missed any of these episodes, you can go back and listen to them. I hope you all have a wonderful week. And thank you again, Maria, for coming on. And I hope everyone has a great week. And I will speak to you soon. Bye, everybody.